Hello everyone and good evening. My name's Don Arleth and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. Kosovo is holding local elections after months of political deadlock. Could the country be headed for a period of political stability? We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. The U.S. helps Ukraine strike targets deep inside Russia. Gaza ceasefire holds for now. Hostages set to be released on Monday. And former race car driver upends Czech government coalition building. Kosovars headed to the polls today in municipal elections that could reshape not just city councils, but a fragile balance of power in the region still healing from war. In a country where politics is inseparable from ethnicity and where 10 out of 38 municipalities are predominantly Serb, this ballot is more than just about potholes and public services. It's a test of democracy. Pavel Trzaskowski reports.
Kosovans are casting their votes in the country's municipal election. A local ballot, but carrying a lot of weight.
I expect changes and for things to be better.
And that's because out of 38 municipalities in Kosovo, where more than 90% of citizens are of Albanian ethnicity, 10 municipalities are populated mostly by Serbs. A result of 1999 Kosovo War and the country's eventual breaking away from Serbia. More than 25 years after the conflict was resolved, this ethnic composition is still a source of tensions. In the previous municipal elections, some Serb communities turned their backs on the ballot.
What had happened in the last elections was there was a boycott of the four municipalities with majority Serbian communities in the north of the country. That was essentially, the order that came from Belgrade.
As a result, representatives of the Serbian regions were chosen only with the votes of the Albanians.
There were, Albanian mayors who were elected in majority Serb areas.
Clashes ensued in an already volatile region, still overseen by the Kosovo Force NATO mission.
We have seen examples here where with only 100 votes, disastrous decisions were made for the Serbian population and other communities in northern Kosovo.
This time, though, no order to boycott the election has come from Belgrade, but Serbian influence was still pronounced by the Kosovan government ahead of the vote.
Promises of jobs and financial support, conditioning and blackmail with social benefits, and statements by Serbian state officials that, quote, only the Serb list defends Serbia in Kosovo, as recently made by the former Prime Minister of Serbia, now advisor to the Serbian President, Miloš Vučević, and also by President Aleksandar Vučić himself, are repeated methods of Serbia's interference in Kosovo's electoral process.
Still, no boycott could mean more stability for a country that's only now ending a turbulent period. After the general election held in February this year, the parliament failed to elect its speaker during 50 consecutive sessions. The deadlock only ended this August, and the last deputy speaker, the one from the Serbian community, was elected 2 days before the Sunday ballot.
The Assembly elected Deputy Nana Drasic as Deputy Speaker of the Assembly of the Republic of Kosovo from among the deputies of the Serbian community.
The nomination of the last Deputy Speaker of Parliament finally paved the way for the nomination of a new Prime Minister. Albin Kurti, the Prime Minister of the previous government and a caretaker Prime Minister since February, was tasked with forming a new government within the next 2 weeks, a deadline that coincides with the runoff of Sunday's municipal election. Pavel Trzaskowski for TVP World.
And now to Ukraine, where new evidence suggests that the United States has been directly helping Kyiv strike targets deep inside Russia. As Ukraine continues its push for more European support, including protecting its critical civilian infrastructure, the country's domestic drone industry is now among the best in the world. Randy Potts has the details.
The U.S. has been helping Ukraine mount long-range strikes on Russian energy facilities for months, the Financial Times reported on Sunday. This comes after a month of complaints from Moscow about Washington and the NATO alliance regularly supplying intelligence to Kyiv.
In fact, Trump has said so openly in some of his social media posts, in his Truth social media posts, that he thinks Ukraine should start striking deep into Russian lines.
According to Financial Times, U.S. intelligence helps Kyiv shape route planning, altitude, timing, and even mission decisions, enabling Ukraine's long-range drones to evade Russian air defenses.
I just spoke with President Trump for the second time in recent days. We are working closely with America to strengthen our air defense, all our defense capabilities. We see and hear that Russia is afraid that the Americans might give us tomahawks. This is a signal that this kind of pressure can work for the sake of peace.
Ukrainian forces have also been firing U.S.-made HIMARS at the Russian military, both in occupied Ukraine and deep inside Russia, also apparently with the help of U.S. intel. But Kyiv also continues to push Europe for stronger security guarantees. Over the weekend, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
This is very important because I want at least to have the final steps to put details in security guarantees, but put it on paper, not just to speak about it.
But not all of Ukraine's recent progress comes with outside help. Even in the midst of the invasion, Ukraine in 2025 has managed to build a drone industry that is now the envy of Europe.
Ukraine also has something to offer, to teach with the knowledge, to introduce some of the technologies that are being checked and verified on daily basis with the combat conditions.
With direct U.S. help, Russia's economy faltering, and a burgeoning domestic drone industry, is the tide changing for Ukraine?
This is how you create a strategic dilemma for the other side. Not symmetric response, because obviously Ukrainians do not have as much power as the Russia, but they're able to even show the Goliath that they're able to continue to fight.
For TVP World, Randy Potts.
NATO's capability gaps, especially in air defense, is nothing new. However, so far they haven't been treated as a top priority. But as this has changed after Russia's recent violations of NATO airspace, that's according to Lieutenant General Piotr Błazeusz, former commanding general of the Eurocorps, attending the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Ljubljana. More from our defense correspondent, Zuzana Jurek.
At the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in the Slovenian capital of Ljubljana, key discussions are being had pertaining to the strengthening of defense, deterrence and security challenges within the NATO alliance. To discuss some of these, we are now joined by Lieutenant General Piotr Błazeusz, the Commanding General of Eurocorps in the years 2024 to 2025. General, thank you so much for making the time to meet with us. My first question pertains to outlining some of these critical capability gaps and when it comes to air defenses and how those can be addressed.
Well, those gaps are not something that we have discovered recently. I mean, those gaps have been with us for a while, and for a number of reasons. That there was no such threat, and nations were not treating them with the highest priority. But it's being changed after Russia has shown that it's willing to illegally enter the airspace with a symbol of saturation, because having about 20 of those drones it gives you a flavor of saturation. And in Ukraine, we see the attacks, waves of 500 drones and 50 missiles at the same time. The issue is obviously that we need to continue working on the detection, improving our detection. The second one on having a recognized air picture, especially at the lower altitude, that you can easily share with everybody, and that all the systems capabilities that are deployed from different countries are easily plugged in, and that the so-called kill chain, actually the decision time between detecting and then using appropriate effector is as short as possible.
So when it comes to one of the key challenges which has emerged, and that is drones, obviously you've mentioned this having played a huge part in Ukraine and war in Ukraine. How might allies move forward with improving their capabilities when it comes to drone interceptions, for example, in order to ensure that these are truly effective?
I think it's already happening, both in NATO and the EU. First of all, we're trying to adjust our procurement procedures, so if very small companies, not a big consolidated ones, can have access, and we should be able to buy from them their innovative capabilities. There is a need to accept the risk that some of those new counter-UAS capabilities are not maybe fully developed, maybe not as effective as we think, but it's worth taking, because the innovation usually lies with the small companies, small startups. And I think we are already changing our rules and procedures to be able to tap to those capabilities and use them.
Do you believe that the NATO alliance will be able to come to a consensus when it comes to deciding on the intentionality of the incursions by Russian drones into the eastern flank's airspace in recent weeks?
According to my knowledge, NATO always did. The only challenge was it sometimes took a little bit longer. But I think that thanks to the actions of the Russian Federation, all of our allies realized that we need to deal with this problem. We cannot postpone it. We cannot in any way try to put it aside. So we're strong at 32, but obviously sometimes it takes a little bit longer time to achieve a consensus. But once we achieve the consensus, the other side is no match for us.
Thank you very much, General. And thank you for watching from Ljubljana for TVP World. I'm Susanna Jurek.
3 days into the fragile ceasefire, Gaza continues to hold its breath. Hostages are set to be released, prisoners exchanged, and Donald Trump is expected to visit Israel on Monday before heading for a peace summit to Egypt. At the same time, here in Poland, pro-Palestinian protests were held across the country. Volunteers from the Sumud flotilla who returned to Poland now plan to take legal action against Israel for their detention. Natalia Komarov has more.
The ceasefire is in effect. Hamas is set to release all remaining hostages on Monday. Palestinians are returning to the north of the Gaza Strip. Trucks with humanitarian aid are finally reaching those in need.
But these people haven't gathered here to celebrate. They believe the fight for free Palestine is still not over.
We know that Israel broke ceasefires before. They broke every international law regarding Palestine, and we believe that the only solution is to putting pressure on Israel, putting pressure on our government, and that's why we're protesting today.
People can see what is happening in Gaza, they can see what is happening in the West Bank, and they oppose it. This is very important for our nation, as it is going through hardships.
Demonstrations were held Sunday not only in Warsaw but also in Kraków, Poznań and Wrocław. They were attended by the Polish volunteers who sailed with the Gaza Sumud flotilla. Now, back in Poland, the 4 activists are planning to take legal steps against Israel.
We have all given statements to lawyers here in Poland where we want to use universal jurisdiction to bring about legal proceedings, a legal complaint against our abduction, the attack on our humanitarian convoy at sea, which is a war crime.
The activists have criticized the Polish government for what they believe is a weak response to the conduct of the Israeli army in the Gaza Strip, which a UN Special Commission has deemed a genocide. A word the Polish foreign minister refuses to use.
What has been happening in Gaza and what is hopefully ending is, of course, a terrible catastrophe. And I wouldn't rule out war crimes being committed there. I want to make that clear. But not every war crime is a genocide.
The Palestinian ambassador to Poland praises his cooperation with Polish lawmakers despite disagreements.
It's clear what stance the Polish government takes, be it in the EU or on the international stage. Poland supports peace. Poland supports the two-state solution, and it shows in the way it votes. But when it comes to what the Israeli government and army are doing to the civilians in Gaza, yes, there our opinions differ.
According to an Ipsos poll from August of this year, 70% of Poles do believe Israeli actions in Gaza amount to genocide, and over 60% would like to see the Polish government involved in the delivery of humanitarian aid.
I will not feel any satisfaction until Netanyahu's in The Hague, Yoav Gallant is in The Hague, Ben Gvir is in The Hague, until we have total liberation for Palestinians and total equality for people living in the land. That's it.
On Monday, over 20 world leaders will meet in Egypt. The summit will be chaired by US President Donald Trump and his Egyptian counterpart, Abdel al-Sisi. According to Cairo, the aim of the meeting is to end the war in the Gaza Strip. And yet neither Israeli nor Palestinian leaders appear on the guest list.
For many Poles, the pictures coming out of Gaza eerily resemble the pictures of Warsaw post-1944. Well, today the Polish capital is vibrant and thriving. For Gaza to rebuild the same way as Warsaw did, it will need international support. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
A Czech race car driver turned politician, Filip Turek, is no stranger to controversy. His anti-EU stance and provocative online persona made him a rising star in Czech politics. But now, deleted posts praising fascist leaders and spreading hate have thrown coalition talks into chaos, with incoming Prime Minister Babiš under pressure and allies threatening to walk away. Turek's future and the Czech Republic's next government hang in the balance. Maciej Jastrzębski reports.
Ex-racing driver, car collector, lover of political incorrectness, and hater of Brussels bureaucracy. This is how Filip Turek's bio reads on X. As for his political views, let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
We need a restoration of the state so it doesn't disappear into the grey uniformity of Europe. We want a self-confident Czech Republic. We reject the euro. We reject the abolition of the Czech koruna. We reject giving up the right of veto.
But neither this nor one of his company's marketing of uncertified antivirus home remedies to seniors and others during the COVID-19 pandemic caused the storm that shook the Czech Republic amid Prime Minister Andrej Babiš's nerve-wracking coalition building. Instead, what brought about the reckoning were the allegations by Czech daily Deník N of Turek repeatedly posting openly racist, sexist, and homophobic statements on Facebook, as well as numerous references to Nazi leader Adolf Hitler and fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. Turek, who was Babiš's hopeful for the post of foreign minister, reportedly deleted the entries, but as reported by Deník N, Babiš no longer wants him in the government. It's a pickle that has much to do with whether Babiš's ANO party would be able to woo the minimum of 21 MPs to build a ruling coalition or not.
The head of this motorist party, a gentleman called Matsinka, said either there will be Turek in Babiš's government or we are not going to be members of this coalition.
Babiš may still count on the neo-fascist Freedom and Direct Democracy, whose leader Tomio Okamura wants the Czech Republic to exit the EU. But such alliances have so far only alienated the ANO movement.
The centrist parties around the group of Petr Fiala said that they would absolutely have nothing to do with Babiš.
Turek's gnarly comments have caused outrage across the Czech society, the majority of which voted for Babiš in defiance of Petr Fiala's government, perceived as made up of affluent middle-class intellectuals.
They just basically ignored the fact that over the past few years, many people in the Czech Republic have become quite poor. There is a big economic difference between large towns, large cities, and the countryside.
As Babiš is set to hold a meeting with the motorists on Monday, former MEP Jan Zahradil, who this year left the Civic Democratic Party, a coalition member of Fiala's government, is speculated to be the alternative candidate for the post of foreign minister in Babiš's government.
As the fall wind cuts through Warsaw's streets, something warmer stirs underground. The pulse of jazz, alive and evolving. From Afrobeat icons to AI-infused improvisations and jam sessions, the city's jazz scene is more than just music. Here's a look at what it looks like.
It's Friday night in Warsaw, and as the wind sharpens, jazz venues still hold their grip on the heartbeats of those who listen. Tonight's crowd has gathered under the spell of Deli Sosimi, who's bringing jazz energy improvisation into the Afrobeat and Polish contexts. In 2020, Deli performed with Polish bassist Radek Bond-Bednarz alongside other Polish jazz musicians at the Eclectic Session Festival in Wrocław.
Bring it down. We had a blast. We spent time walking out the music, walking on the music, assimilating the vibes. And I did say to them that, look, this is Afrobeat, but you know, I understand you're coming from a different background than me, but the idea is freedom.
With Afrobeat icons like Deli, Jasmine continues in the spirit of Poland's legendary Jazz Jamboree Festival, pulling in international stars like a cosmic gravity well.
What's most important for us is the magic of a live show, the dialogue between the musician and the audience.
Now, are people crowding the club just for the notes and tunes? Warsaw offers a whole variety of jazz feasts. In Bardzo Bardzo, muses intermingle. The paintings on the walls, they belong to drummer Gniewomir's father, while he himself is taking jazz to a cyberpunkish dimension in his upcoming album, Futuropolis.
I take my jazz backgrounds to modern situation, and I play on the stage of drums, and I improvise with AI.
Spativ, by contrast, is Warsaw's downtown den, where the air smells of smoking 1990s nostalgia.
Free entry every Wednesday. You know, it's the middle of the week. You want to chill a bit with music, you come here. And I just love jazz. That's why I come here.
The band looks really nice, so we will later go and see it.
Tonight, the stage belongs to Kumquat, young, zesty up-and-comers of Polish jazz.
Our initiative consolidates various social groups and generations. We've got scores of young people, jazz enthusiasts, adults, retired people visiting, and I'm grateful for that.
And once you unwind, be it in Jasmine, Bardzo Bardzo, Spativ, or some tucked-away cellar, let Warsaw's jazz carry you home.
Kosovo votes and the stakes go far beyond local councils. As municipal elections unfold across 38 towns, the ruling Vetbendosie party eyes control of the capital, Pristina, amid deep political tensions and frozen ties with Serbia. With ethnic division still shaping the ballot and coalition talks stalled, this vote could redefine Kosovo's political future. And now joining me to discuss here on World News Tonight is Ivana Stradner, Research Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Hello, Ivana, and thank you so much for joining us on World News Tonight.
Always pleasure.
Yeah, so we hear that these municipal elections have effects that go far beyond just the local officials. Now, for you, what is at stake in these elections?
To begin with, normally such elections would not make a big news, but you're right that these elections are very, very important because even many in the West criticized for a long time that Kosovo actually lacked a functioning government for many, many months. And now elections are happening, that including a representative for the ethnic Serb minority. And that was the issue, a controversial issue for a very long time because the government there was not happy that Srpska lista, so-called the Serb list, which is the dominant Serb party over there, has very close ties to President Vučić and to the Serbian government. And indeed, their policies have been very much in alignment with President Vučić's policies. So that's number one thing. I also do believe that elections are going to be very, very important because of Kosovo's relations with the European Union as well as the United States, because there are still two problems with the EU. There are EU sanctions that are in place, but also recently dialogue with Washington has been suspended. And Kosovo is very much reliant on the West, not only in terms of economy, but also political support. And I do believe that the future of Kosovo will be very much reliant on the West support. So that's something that the government has to work on, how to make relationships better with the EU as well as the United States. And the third thing is, as Russia is taking the lead right now in the UN Security Council this month, Russia made two priorities related to Europe. One is Kosovo, the second is Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we also have to pay attention to that. Speaking of which, even the elections that we are talking right now about, Russia didn't miss an opportunity to add fuel to fire. And Radio Free Europe just recently published even an article about Russian interference over there through media such as RT and Sputnik, with very inflammatory texts, trying to polarize the region even further, emphasizing ethnic tensions and trying to add more fuel to fire in terms of potential security threats. Because still tensions between Serbia and Kosovo are very high. And just 2 years ago, 19 NATO peacekeepers were injured when Serb protesters were there. So such escalations are not going to fade anytime soon, or at least I don't see, because right now as Putin is negotiating on Ukraine, he needs to distract the West with more tensions. The good news is he didn't succeed in Moldova, and we have to make sure that he's not going to succeed as a next flashpoint in the Western Balkans, both in Kosovo, given that NATO peacekeepers are stationed there, and also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So these elections are not only important in terms of domestic issues in Kosovo, but they are geopolitically very important.
Yes. Now, last time Belgrade had encouraged ethnic Serbs to boycott the elections. Why was that decision made, and why are they not boycotting the elections this time around?
So they're indeed not boycotting elections because they believe, by having more power, they are going to have access to decision-making process.
How might the outcome of these municipal elections affect Kosovo's stalled dialogue with Serbia?
I have to tell you, I don't believe that the dialogue is going to move into any meaningful direction in terms of sorting out those issues, because especially now when President Vučić has massive protests in his home country, he needs always to have destabilized Kosovo so he can always escalate and then de-escalate and then to position himself as a pillar of stability. Of course, this would not be allowed and possible without the support coming from Moscow. So I have to bring the bad news that I really, really don't see the dialogue is going to move forward. No matter how the government is being formed, because the problem also lies in Belgrade and Vučić seeking for power and trying to distract from his own massive protests that he's facing right now in his home country, especially after the United States imposed sanctions on Nice, which is linked to Russian Gazprom, which is going to probably have massive impact on economy. And people are going to be more and more dissatisfied with the rule by the Vučić government.
And since we're on that topic, in just 2 weeks, it will mark 1 year since the student protests broke out in Serbia over that deadly collapse of the canopy at a railway station in Novi Sad. What's next for these protests and the internal political situation in Serbia?
So I don't think that students are going to stop to protest anytime soon. They are seeking democratic government and democracy in the country. And unlike some older generations, they do not want to leave the country. They want to stay there. They want to have a better future. In order to do that, they don't want to have a corrupt authoritarian government in power. They don't want Serbia to become Belarus 2.0. Having said that, make no mistake, they are not going to stop with protests, no matter how the Serbian government is trying to suppress them, trying to control media, trying to scare people, going after individuals. undermining human rights, that is not going to scare them. As a matter of fact, President Vučić thought that such protests would stop very soon, but as you mentioned, they have been around for a year, and his government is suffering also in terms of economy, and now especially with Russia issue related to gas, he's going to have even more problems. So for that reason, I don't think, that protests are going to stop anytime soon. It's quite, devastating really to see also how the Serbian government, along with Russian government, have been claiming how this is all Western plotted color revolution, and they're pushing, all those horrible agendas in the information space. But the good news is young Serbs are not falling for such propaganda.
All right. Well, with that, we've run out of time. Ivana Stradner, a research fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Always pleasure. Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great evening and hope to see you next time. Good night.